The strongest man you'll ever meet isn't the one surrounded by an entourage. He's not the one with a phone that never stops ringing or social media overflowing with comments. Number. The strongest man is often the one who walks alone, who has learned to find peace in his own company, who doesn't need the constant reassurance of others to know his worth. There's something profound about a man who has discovered the strength that lies in solitude. Not isolation born of fear or rejection, but a deliberate solitude, a chosen path of self-reliance that comes from knowing exactly who he is. When we speak of such a man, we're talking about someone who has journeyed inward, who has done the work that so many avoid. He's stood in front of the mirror and truly seen himself, not just the surface reflection, but the depths of who he is, the good and the bad, the triumphs and the failures, the dreams fulfilled and the ones still waiting. And in that honest reflection, he's found something invaluable, a foundation that can't be shaken by the opinions of others. This isn't about rejecting connection or becoming cold to the world around you. Far from it. This is about discovering that before you can truly connect with others, you must first connect with yourself. It's about building a core of inner strength that doesn't waver when the crowd disperses. In a society where validation has become a currency, where worth is often measured in likes and follows, a man who stands secure in his solitude has discovered a different kind of wealth. He's rich in self-knowledge, abundant in inner peace, wealthy in a way that can't be quantified by the world's metrics. He knows something that eludes so many, that true strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself or demand attention. True strength is quiet, steady, unwavering. Like a mountain that doesn't need to proclaim its height, he simply is. The path through fire. The journey to this kind of strength isn't an easy one. It's a path through fire, a willful walk through the shadows of your own making. When a man chooses to stand alone, to rely on himself rather than the constant affirmation of others, he's forced to confront parts of himself that most people spend their lives running from. There's nowhere to hide when it's just you and your thoughts. No distractions to drown out the voice inside that speaks the truths you've been avoiding. He's had to face his weaknesses, his regrets, his failures, the mistakes that keep others awake at night, the insecurities that drive people to seek endless distraction. He's looked them straight in the eye, and in that confrontation, he's found liberation. Because once you've faced the worst of yourself and still found reasons to stand tall, what power does anyone else's judgment hold over you? Once you've acknowledged your flaws and decided to grow beyond them, what can the criticism of others possibly take from you? This man has walked through the darkest corridors of his own mind and emerged not broken, but rebuilt. Stronger, wiser, more whole than before. He's done the work that so many avoid, and in doing so, he's earned a kind of peace that few will ever know. When he's alone, he isn't haunted by the things left unsaid or the person he failed to be. He's at peace because he's reconciled with himself. He's acknowledged his mistakes, learned from them, grown because of them. He carries no unfinished business within his own heart. That's a rare kind of freedom, a rare kind of strength. The misunderstood solitude. People often misunderstand this kind of man. They see him standing apart and think he must be lonely. They mistake his self-reliance for isolation, his independence for disconnection. But there's a vast difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is an absence, a lacking, a hole where connection should be. Solitude, true solitude, is a presence. It's rich with reflection, abundant in awareness, full with the kind of self-knowledge that can only come when the noise of the world fades away. A man who has learned to embrace solitude isn't running from connection. He's discovered a deeper connection with himself. And from that foundation, any relationships he does form come from choice rather than necessity, from want rather than need, from abundance rather than lack. He doesn't collect people to fill an emptiness inside him. He doesn't surround himself with voices to drown out his own thoughts. He's selective about who he allows into his world because he respects himself enough to protect his peace. In the quiet moments, in the spaces between words and actions, he's found a clarity that eludes those who can't bear to be alone with themselves. He's discovered that in stillness, there is wisdom. In silence, there is truth. In solitude, there is strength. And that strength becomes the cornerstone of everything he does, everything he is. Beyond the need for validation, one of the most powerful realizations that comes from this journey is the understanding that your worth isn't determined by others' perception of you. It's not measured in applause or agreement, in likes or follows, in the number of people who know your name. A man who knows himself, who has done the inner work to become secure in who he is, he no longer looks outward for validation. He doesn't need the crowd to tell him he's worthy, valuable, enough. He knows it because he's earned that knowledge through honest self-reflection and deliberate growth. This isn't arrogance. There's nothing arrogant about self-knowledge. This is simply the quiet confidence that comes from having built something solid within yourself, something that doesn't depend on external factors to sustain it. When you're no longer chasing approval, when you're no longer shifting and changing to fit whatever mold seems most likely to win acceptance, you discover a freedom that few will ever experience. The freedom to be authentically, unapologetically yourself. You're not performing for an audience anymore. You're not curating a version of yourself designed to maximize approval. You're simply living in alignment with your values, with your truth, with the person you've worked to become. And there's an immense power in that authenticity, a magnetism that draws people to you, not because you're trying to impress them, but precisely because you're not. Because in a world of careful curation and strategic presentation, genuine authenticity stands out like a beacon. The wisdom of the quiet hours. There's a specific kind of wisdom that can only be gained in the quiet hours, in the moments when it's just you and your thoughts with no distractions to soften the encounter. In those moments of reflective solitude, a man learns things about himself that he could never discover in a crowd. He begins to recognize the patterns in his thinking, the recurring themes in his actions, the core values that truly drive him rather than the ones he claims to hold. He starts to distinguish between his authentic self and the persona he's constructed for others, between what he truly wants and what he's been conditioned to pursue, between the voice of his own intuition and the echoes of expectations he's internalized from others. This kind of self-knowledge is invaluable. It allows him to make decisions from a place of clarity rather than confusion, from intention rather than reaction. It enables him to navigate life's complexities with a steadiness that others lack, because he knows exactly where he stands and what he stands for. He's not swayed by every new opinion, not thrown off course by criticism or praise. He has an internal compass that guides him, a solid foundation of self-knowledge that keeps him grounded when everything around him seems uncertain. That's the wisdom of solitude. Not book knowledge or intellectual understanding, but a deep, embodied knowing. A knowing that transcends thought and becomes part of who you are, how you move through the world, how you respond to its challenges. And from that wisdom comes a kind of peace that can't be disturbed by external circumstances, that remains steady even when everything else is in flux. The selective nature of true connection. A man who values himself, who respects his own peace and purpose, becomes naturally selective about the people he allows into his life, not from a place of judgment or superiority, but from a place of self-respect and clarity. He understands something fundamental. Not every connection is beneficial. Not every relationship adds value to your life. Some drain rather than nourish. Some distract rather than support. Some complicate rather than enrich. And because he values himself, because he honors his own journey, he's careful about the energy he invites into his space. He doesn't form connections out of desperation or fear of being alone. He doesn't maintain relationships that diminish rather than enhance his life. This selectivity isn't about being cold or distant. It's about being intentional. It's about understanding that your time, your energy, your attention, these are precious resources. And like any valuable resource, they should be invested wisely, not scattered indiscriminately. When he does form connections, they tend to be deeper, more meaningful, more authentic, because they're based on genuine alignment rather than convenience or comfort, because they're chosen consciously rather than formed by default. He seeks depth over breadth in his relationships, quality over quantity, authenticity over appearance, and he's willing to walk alone rather than compromise on these standards, rather than settle for connections that don't honor who he is and what he values. That's not isolation. That's discernment. That's not loneliness. That's self-respect. The freedom of self-approval. Perhaps the greatest gift that comes from this journey is freedom. The freedom that comes when you no longer need others' approval to feel worthy, when your sense of self isn't dependent on external validation. Most people spend their lives in invisible chains, bound by the need for acceptance, limited by the fear of judgment. They make decisions based not on what they truly want or value, but on what they think will earn approval, what will avoid criticism, what will maintain their standing in others' eyes. But a man who has learned to stand alone, who has built his worth from within rather than seeking it from without, he's broken those chains. He's liberated himself from the prison of others' opinions. He doesn't make choices to impress or appease. He doesn't silence his truth to avoid rocking the boat. He doesn't shrink himself to make others comfortable or inflate himself to win their admiration. He simply lives according to his values, pursues his purpose, speaks his truth. Not in defiance of others, but in alignment with himself. Not to prove anything to anyone, but because anything else would be a betrayal of who he is. That kind of freedom is revolutionary in a world where so many are still seeking permission to be themselves, still waiting for someone else to tell them they're enough, still looking outward for validation that can only truly come from within. It's a freedom that allows him to take risks others wouldn't dare, to stand for principles even when it's unpopular, to walk away from situations that don't serve him even when others don't understand. Because his sense of self isn't tied to their understanding or approval. He's not immune to the desire for connection, for understanding, for appreciation. He's human after all. But those desires don't control him. They don't drive his decisions or determine his worth. He's found something deeper to anchor himself to. His own truth, his own integrity, his own purpose. And that anchor holds steady no matter how the winds of opinion may blow. The legacy of the solitary path. A man who walks this path leaves a different kind of legacy. Not one measured in accolades or achievements, not one defined by wealth accumulated or status attained, but one reflected in the quality of his character, in the integrity of his choices, in the authenticity of his life. He stands as a reminder in a noisy world that true strength often speaks in whispers, that real confidence doesn't need constant reassurance, that genuine worth doesn't depend on others' recognition. In a culture obsessed with external metrics, with visible success, with quantifiable worth, he embodies a different kind of value. A value that can't be measured or displayed, that doesn't translate to social currency or status symbols, but that resonates with something deeper in the human spirit. He reminds us that before we can truly connect with others, we must first connect with ourselves. That before we can offer genuine value to the world, we must first discover our own intrinsic worth. That before we can stand for something in the external landscape, we must first build something solid within our internal one. His legacy isn't loud or flashy. It doesn't demand attention or seek the spotlight. Like the man himself, it simply is, quiet, steady, unwavering, a testament to the power of self-knowledge, of deliberate solitude, of inner strength built through honest reflection and purposeful growth. And in a world increasingly characterized by superficial connection, by constant distraction, by endless noise, that legacy becomes ever more valuable. A beacon for those willing to do the work, to take the journey inward, to discover the strength that can only be found in solitude. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. And a man who has cultivated that relationship, who has built it on a foundation of honesty, respect, and continuous growth, he possesses a wealth that can never be taken away, a strength that can never be diminished, a peace that can never be disturbed. He stands complete within himself, not perfect, but whole, not flawless, but authentic, not immune to life's challenges, but equipped with the inner resources to face them with steadiness and grace. And in that completeness, he finds a freedom that transcends circumstance, a peace that endures amid chaos, a strength that remains unshaken even when he stands alone. That is the power of knowing yourself. That is the gift of embracing solitude. That is the quiet strength of a man who has learned to walk his own path, to trust his own voice, to find his worth within himself rather than seeking it from the world around him. It's a strength available to anyone willing to do the work, to take the journey, to face themselves honestly, and grow deliberately. A strength built not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, not in the noise, but in the silence, not in the crowd, but in solitude. A strength that, once built, becomes the foundation of everything you are, everything you do, everything you might yet become. True power, quiet power, the power within. Did you know? Just one like from you can give me the motivation to create more awesome videos. And by subscribing with the notification bell on, you'll never miss out on my next amazing content. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this video or suggest a topic you'd like to see next.